Well, one of the things you talked about in the tape series, which I thought was quite interesting, is that that one of the times that we do have the ability to access our theta waves is right on that time when we're just first waking up. Can you talk about how we can use that creatively?
That to me is the most exciting part of the day. Just as you're coming out of sleep, you're in that twilight reverie state. Part of you, one leg is kind of still in that dream state. The other part of you is just putting your toe into waking reality. And I do that every morning. I kind of try to surf theta. And that's where a lot of my creative and inspirational ideas have come from. And the same at night, just before going to sleep, before going over the edge. Try to stay awake, but not wide awake. And don't allow yourself to go into that delta state. And that is the key. That is the key to kind of learn to surf theta. And it just takes practice, Andrew. That I love the state, although I've got 2 cats at home, and usually about that time of the morning they want to eat, and I'm surfing theta, and all of a sudden I have 2 little paws in my face. Wake up, it's time to feed us.
Well, I do remember that state. I mean, I also enjoy using it on a regular basis for creativity, and it also seems to be a place where some of the barriers to the unconscious are a little thinner. When I was younger and going to school, we used to have to learn a poem every week of about 20 lines, something like that. And I used to find that if I just read the poem 2 or 3 times, last thing before I went to bed, and then when I first woke up, and I would try and remember it in that theta phase, and I could remember it. And if I could remember it then or put it together, then I knew I would have it for being in front of class. It was a very useful time for reinforcing things into my mind.
Exactly. And see, another technique that I use a lot with patients and myself is just as you're going into that twilight reverie state, and this is an old technique that goes back to the sleep temples in Greece 2,000 years ago, get an image or a symbol representing the goal that you want to achieve, and hold that in your mind. Thoughts will come in, but tease the thoughts out, but keep holding that image, that one image that represents your goal. And as you go over the edge into sleep, that becomes almost like a dream seed. And then, because dreams, as you know, we dream about 2 hours a night. We have about 4 or 5 dream cycles. I think that dreams are kind of energy blueprints of possible and probable futures. We try out a lot of things in our dream states before they bleed into reality. So by having this symbol as a dream seed, you're creating a dream that will then become the energy blueprint of the kind of future you want to achieve. As a matter of fact, at the end of almost every hypnotic session I do with people, I'll ask the subconscious to select one out of the 4 or 5 dream cycles and to make that a healing dream of whatever needs to be healed from the past so that they can achieve the future they're looking for. So in a sense, we're using a lot of ancient techniques, discovering what we already know but don't know that we know it.
So can we now come back to the more practical piece? We have our listeners understanding now the 3 steps to a visualization and achieving what they want. If we were to get a little more specific about it and talk about how visualizing applies to goal setting specifically, or to goal achieving, one of the things that I find very challenging for Success Track members is that our program is designed to help them bring into fruition something that they want. So if they know what they want, then it helps them set their priorities and take the steps to get there.
Right.
But many of them say, well, I'm just not sure what I want. And I'm wondering how we can use visualization, or what techniques you have, if any, for helping us decide which one is where we want to go and getting more and more clarity about our goals.
Well, people generally will have 2 or 3 ideas in mind. What I do is I use energy testing, muscle testing. I'll have them close their eyes, put their arm out. I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with applied kinesiology. And you can actually talk to the subconscious and give vocal cords to the subconscious through the body. So I'll have a person close their eyes, imagine one goal, put their arm out, and I'll muscle test. If it tests weak, what the body-mind is telling me, this is not really where I want to go. Then we'll try another goal, and then if it tests strong, that seems to be more likely the fork in the road that they want to take, and so forth. So I work a lot with the deeper mind and asking it, and then teaching the person how to test themselves. And that's the key, is, I try to do myself out of a job as soon as I can. I like to get people, teach everyone the techniques that I know, teach them to begin using them on their own.
Well, there's certainly a lot of techniques in the tape series. It's
yeah.
One technique after another.
Well, not all techniques will work for everyone. So this is why I provide a whole, a smorgasbord and let people select that which works best for them.
So let's go back to the muscle testing. So I suspect, with true confessions here, that if you were to muscle test me and say, okay, I want to earn $500,000 a year and be independently wealthy, if you were to test me on that, I suspect that I have unconscious beliefs, limiting and negative beliefs that would cause me to test weakly on that. So I would muscle test you, and I'd have you say, I'm confident that I can achieve that goal. And if you tested weak, then there'd be something to talk about. I deserve to achieve that goal. Okay, so now let's say that I do test weak on that. Where do we go from there? What do we work?
Then we sit down and we look at, what are the reasons behind it? How come? How come you feel there's a part of you that doesn't think you can, select a goal that you've set? Maybe you set it too high. Maybe we should do it in steps. Start off with a lower goal and work up. So that's the way everything, all goals, and are a reflection of our self-esteem. See, I consider self-esteem to be the hub of the wheel of success. And things like visualization, self-talk, goal setting, all that are the spokes. But if you don't estimate yourself, if you don't value yourself enough, you're not going to draw valuable things into your life. So critical to the whole thing is raising one's self-estimate, how you esteem yourself. Then as you get a higher sense of self-worth, then you're going to draw more worthy things into your life. If you have a low sense of self-worth, you are not. Now, fortunately, self-esteem there is a general factor of self-esteem, but we have self-esteem in different areas of our lives. For instance, I have the lowest self-esteem when it comes to computers. I just look at my computer and my eyes cross. And there's a part of me, I think, I guess doesn't want to, but on the other hand, I have a high sense of self-esteem as a presenter. I have a high sense of self-esteem as a therapist, a medium sense of self-esteem in other areas of my life. So, look at our strengths and our weaknesses, and that's what you want to work on. But self-esteem is critical. And one of the most corrosive qualities of low self-esteem is victimhood. The moment you blame anyone for any one of your problems in life, you're disenfranchising yourself of your personal power. You're giving your power away to your spouse, to your boss, to whoever, and saying, you are more powerful for creating my reality than I am. The moment you do that, you're in trouble.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I think the majority of people that I would talk to, and I suspect most of our listeners would say, oh, no, I'm not a victim. And yet I remember hearing a definition of victim I thought was just excellent. It said, a victim is a person who says, he, she, or it did it to me.
Exactly.
So if now we're talking about things like, the government, or high taxes, or high price of fuel,
or my boss, my lousy boss, or my spouse, or whatever.
And anything, anytime you are saying he, she, or it did it to me, is responsible for something that's happened to me, and you're blaming in any way, you're in victimhood. And when you take such a broad definition of victimhood, you start to recognize that we all fall into it more than we'd probably like.
Quite likely. Yeah, and this is one thing I have to consciously make an effort to not blame anyone for my reality. I subscribe to the notion that I create 100% of my reality, either by programming or allowing things to happen to me. Both are programs, both work. So I'd rather program rather than allow things to happen. That way we get out of victimhood and blame. See, victimhood also has to do with releasing the past. In other words, the barge. Most victims rather spend time on the barge, breathing life into the junk and polishing the junk on the barge rather than being on the bridge and creating a future.
Well, I guess if you're looking at something that happened or didn't happen and blaming it on somebody else, you're automatically in the past, because it's, we're looking and saying, this is what happened to cause where I am today.
Exactly. And if you believe in the past creating the present, then you're a victim. I believe that the future creates the present against the backdrop of the past.
That was one of the most interesting pieces of the tape series, is that the ability to visualize is about really using the future as to reinforce and create what we want, and as a way, you talk specifically about building self-esteem and so on, using the visualization techniques.
Exactly, definitely. That's what it's all about. Now, another quality of low self-esteem, of course, is martyrhood, struggle, hardship, no pain, no gain, the old Protestant ethic. And how many of us have bought into the Protestant ethic so that, we think, oh, God, everything's going to be hard work. If you don't work hard, you won't succeed. Well, I think that's a false belief. Another quality of low self-esteem is shame. And that's the most corrosive emotion. Now, high self-esteem people, of course, are quick to forgive, and I think that's the most powerful emotion that we've got, is forgiveness. The moment you forgive someone, you've released the past, and you're no longer into blame. And humility, to have humility to see someone fresh every day. In other words, as a new person every day. I've learned a lot from my animals. I study my animals because they've really become sort of like gurus. You never see animals holding on to. They're quick to forgive. They're playful. They're humorous. And so forth. And I think that is an important quality. If we can forgive, then we can release the past. For instance, with many of my cancer patients, there's a point on the body, the gallbladder thing, which has a lot to do with anger, like what galls you. When I test that point, they're frequently weak on that point. And a lot of cancer patients have got a lot of anger, holding on to grievances, holding on to blame, whatever. The moment they release it, however, and forgive, then things change. I've actually seen white blood cell count go up overnight from 3.7 to 5.3. Overnight, the moment a person did a forgiveness meditation.
Well, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think many people have pieces they're holding on to, and they know it, but they just have a hard time letting go. What technique would you use or recommend for somebody who wants to heal or forgive a piece from their past?
Well, first of all, you can't forgive without going through the anger. Deal with the anger. Process the anger. If it means writing a horrible letter to that person and not mailing it, getting out, venting the spleen, letting it out. Then once you let it out, then begin thinking of releasing that person from the bondage that you're holding each other in, because who spends more time in a prison? The warden, when you think about it. So in a sense, you're like the warden holding the other person prisoner, and your blame and so forth. So, but you've got to deal with the anger. And I subscribe to the notion that all healing has to go through the door of forgiveness at some time or other. To release the past, to allow the body mind to heal in the present.
And you're also saying that a big part of reaching the state of forgiveness is to be willing to express whatever negative emotions, judgments, pain, negativity that you
get it out. Release the anger. Absolutely critical. And then once you release it and process it, then you can get into the more positive emotion of forgiving. So, again, I'm so grateful to my patients who have taught me so much about that.
I guess what you're saying is that you've seen over and over again with patients that
and my own personal life, too.
I guess I've seen it for myself, that the desire to forgive somebody and just kind of start programming my mind, I forgive them, unless my body is integrated into it, unless I really have let go, then it's really an intellectual exercise, and it doesn't have the deeper effect.
Exactly. And forgiveness isn't necessarily a one-trial experience. Like I went through something about 3 years ago, quite emotionally devastating for me, and there was a lot of anger involved, and I found that I couldn't get into the forgiveness until I reached the anger, but I had to go through the anger, and then keep reinforcing the forgiveness. And I ended up, mentally sending love to this person. And that really made all the difference in the world.
Well, that's an interesting comment, because one of the notes I made when I was listening to the tape series and reviewing it is that it seems like you have a place in your mind or in your belief system that says there's a time for things, that sometimes things can't be forced to happen.
Exactly.
Could you talk a little about that?
Well, again, if there's so much anger in a situation, you can't release it, then there's no point in even trying to forgive. It won't work. It just won't work.
So really it's about going in stages like I'm thinking of now a NASA rocket taking off. We have to do the main stage first before we can move up to the second stage, the third stage.
Exactly.
And that's when we get into orbit.
Right. That's it. So it's, the whole everything we've been talking about here, Andrew, is not simple. It is not difficult. It's intricate.
Mm-hmm. It is extremely, isn't it?
Yeah, and the left brain, deals with, digital stuff, on, off, good, bad, right, wrong. It's the right brain that deals with the intricacies, the connections of everything that's interconnected.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to pursue this little piece about expressing emotion beyond just anger, because let's say, and this, the piece about everything having its time. If my business or my relationships or whatever are not the way that I want them to be yet, where is the place for me to be visualizing and sort of pushing towards it, and where is the place for me to have more patience and just trust that where I am now
what is
the
the belief that you're holding on to that is not allowing you to create mega success, and you're only creating mini success, let's say? There has to be a belief. There has to be a belief that's supporting it. Well, maybe I'm not capable of it. Maybe I don't deserve it. My mom and dad never were able to do it. How can I, get better, whatever.
That actually does parallel the expression of anger, because anger, of course, comes from a belief, and all emotions come first from a thought that we have.
Exactly. You can't feel without thinking first.
And so now if my business isn't being successful, it's the same thing. It's not anger that I'm going through, but it's still, I need to heal a piece of me that is holding on to an old belief about your potential, your abilities, and so forth. And is therefore an obstacle for me.
Exactly.
That reminded me of a piece when you were talking about the anger and so on that you mentioned in the tape series, which I thought was very interesting. You talked about what you called cancer-prone personalities, and one of the things that we've been doing currently in the Success Tracks program is working on completion of communication, which is sometimes just something you haven't said to somebody, or a letter you haven't sent or whatever. But
unfinished business.
Yes, and many times it is a negative judgment or resentment that we're carrying. And is that what you're talking about when you say cancer-prone personalities? Could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, cancer-prone personalities are usually have a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. They're hanging on to blame, to anger, and it's an emotion. It has to find a storage space someplace in the body. So as long as you're hanging on to negative emotions, where are they stored in the body? And if you keep breathing life into those negative emotions, they will take on a life of their own. So the things that I find, like at the end of every session with a cancer patient, I always ask them, what is your theory as to why you got cancer? And by the way, 1 out of 3 people get cancer in their lifetime today. And almost 95% of the time, I would get a one-word response: stress. More recently, I'm getting a second response: anger. And even more recently, toxins. So I think those are the 3 factors that potentiate or allow cancer to take a toehold. Stress is the biggest one. Anger is number 2, and toxins I'm seeing more and more of now.
And now, is that what is true, or is that what we believe?
No,
is true?
I think it's true, but also, we potentiate it with our beliefs. We amplify it with our beliefs. Mm-hmm. And stress, of course, is just unbelievable how that, because stress affects the immune system. The moment we get stressed, the thymus shrinks, which sits on top of the heart, and it can't accommodate the white blood cells that are being produced by the bone marrow. So if your thymus shrinks, then you can't produce as many T cells, thymus-derived killer cells, and therefore you're going to end up with something, a cold or whatever. Now, the very first line of defense in our body is in our saliva. There's something called immunoglobulin A factor, IgA factor. The moment you get angry with anyone, the IgA factor drops immediately in our saliva. How long does it take to bounce back? 5 hours. So this is where anger, again, feeds into our defense system and weakens our defense system.
So you're saying there actually are clinical reasons that if we are angry and carrying anger and resentment, that we are more likely to get ill.
Exactly. And you're not, what happens when you get angry at someone? You're not affecting them. The only person you're affecting is yourself.
Isn't that amazing?
I know.
That's not what we want to think.
No.
We want to think that our little venom and vengeance that we're sending out through the world to the guy who cut us off in traffic, we want to think that we're getting him with that.
Exactly. And the only person you're affecting is your IgA factor drops, it takes 5 hours to bounce back, and you're opening yourself up to little buggies that just love those kind of defenseless situations.
Lee, you talked a little bit about stress and the importance of relaxation, and it's interesting this has been coming up over and over again, at least for me personally, that in one of the interviews I did a few months ago with a fellow by the name of Vince Pacenti, and he's been doing transcendental meditation for many years, And I just returned from Harv's warrior training, and we were talking about the importance of if one wants to be in the true self and get in touch with the true self, then it's about having a quiet mind. And then in your tape series, you were talking about progressive relaxation and the importance of that. How important is it, or how effective is it, to be doing some kind of regular meditation or relaxation technique in order to combat stress?
Well, I think it's critically important that you find a particular technique that will work best for you. As a matter of fact, I think one of the most powerful techniques is one of the simplest. Herbert Benson, who's a cardiologist at Harvard, studied transcendental meditators, and then he developed what he calls the relaxation response. You can buy that in any pocketbook, and it's about a 5-minute technique where he teaches you how to get into the relaxation response, which is almost like TM actually. And I think that 5-minute, 10-minute technique could probably do more for anyone than hypnosis or anything else, provided you do it on a regular basis. And you know, your listeners could pick that book up for $3.
What was the name of the book again?
The Relaxation Response by Herbert Benson, M.D. He's a cardiologist at Harvard.
Great. Well, and you know, I also like what you said is that it's important to each person find a technique that works for them.
Exactly.
And, you know, so it's not about there is one right way. Each of us has our own style and preferences, and just to find the one that works.
Exactly.
And to keep looking around and exploring.
See, what I'm using more and more of in my office now is something called emotional freedom technique, thought field therapy, where you tap a certain algorithm of acupressure points on the head and body, and you could take stress from a 10 to a 1 in minutes. I teach all my patients that now. And hopefully at the presentation that I'll be doing for Harv, we'll have time at the end of it where I can teach this to people. And I think it's November the 10th.
Oh, for the
Wealth and Wisdom.
Wealth and Wisdom presentation. You're going to be one of the speakers there. That's right.
Yeah, I think hopefully I'll have time to present it. I'll be talking about qualities of high performance people at that presentation, and share with the audience what high performance people do to achieve success. And there are 8 qualities which I'll talk about at that time. Stress, of course, is one of them.
Well, the piece you mentioned just prior to talking about Wealth and Wisdom, the tapping on certain acupressure points and having such a remarkable and instantaneous impact on the body, stress level, and so on. I saw one of the books in your office that had some information on that. It just seems so amazing that can work.
Well, I've done about 2,000 people now in the past 6 years, and it's absolutely revolutionized my practice. I used to see people 6, 8 times now. I see them once, twice. I like teaching people techniques they can take home and use on their own. And acupuncture, is a 5,000-year-old tradition. And what we're doing is rediscovering again what we already know, but didn't know that we knew it. So this is absolutely revolutionary. These particular techniques are excellent for any kind of anxiety disorder, performance anxiety, any kind of fear, traumatic stress. Yesterday I had someone with obsessive-compulsive disorder, etc. It just works miracles, and it's easy to learn.
So, and these are techniques that a person can do on themselves once they've learned them.
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole idea.
And what's it called again?
Well, emotional freedom techniques or thought field therapy.
Fascinating. As I said at the very beginning, I think you really are, one of the fathers of the human potential, and it seems that you're always on the leading edge. And so it's fascinating to be talking to you and hearing about the different the place that you're at now, which is so far ahead of where many of us are. So it's just, obviously we can't learn everything there is to know about these subjects in just an hour, but it's been just great talking with you. Now, for our Success Track members who do want more information about the techniques and so on, I know you have some current products. Of course, you are going to be at the Wealth and Wisdom Seminar.
Right. I'll have some of my product there. I'll have the Power of Visualization will be there. The Mentally Fit Forever will be there, and I'll also have something called Deep Trance Identification. And it's probably the best 2-tape series I've ever done, based on the work of Russian psychologists, where you go into a very deep, profound trance state, and then you mentally fuse, become one with, a mentor, an idol, someone whose qualities you want to begin incorporating as your own. For example, one of the persons who bought my tapes that without I even knowing he was unranked in the racquetball world, and he's given me permission to mention his name, Mitch Smith. Well, he began deep trance identifying with the number one person on the pro tour, and he listened to the tape every night and mentally rehearsed and did all the stuff that was on the tape, quite a bit of things. Well, that year he won the American championship, single championship for his age range, 35 to 40, and then he won the Worlds, and then he won the Nationals 4 years in a row. He's a professional therapist. He now teaches all these techniques to his cancer patients. I've had many of my cancer patients who deep trance identify with themselves when they were healthy and had a healthy immune system, and use the information to change from when they were healthy to change the present.
Wow. Well, I'm not sure if you even have this at your fingertips, but I would like it if we could give information to our members so that they know, first of all, how to contact you. So what you mentioned to me is that in order to order your current products that you have
them fax me, because I'm not very good at email. And I could probably spend the whole day on email if I learned it. That's probably why I'm avoiding it. My fax number is 604-683-6979. And if you just fax, and I'll send you a list of our products and so forth.
Great. And just say a little bit more about the products and have the prices on them?
Yeah. And everything, all the products that are available. I have a whole series of self-hypnosis tapes. I have the Power of Visualization, Mentally Fit Forever. I've got 2 books, the Deep Trance Identification tape. So all they have to do is just fax me their name and address, and I'll send them the product list immediately, and then we can go from there.
Great. So it's, again, fax number 604-683-6979. And you mentioned to me at the beginning that if they want it, they can just either send in a check or call you and
we usually operate on a trust system. I usually send the product and bill them, and they send us the money. And I've been doing that for 4 years, and I've only had one person who didn't pay.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, I love it. I trust people.
Well, we need to wrap up now, Lee. I just have to tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation with you. One of the best parts about my position with Peak Potentials and working with Harv is the opportunity to talk to just amazing masters like yourself on a regular basis.
Well, I envy you too. I'd love to have a job like you're doing. I could learn a lot too.
Well, on behalf of Peak Potentials and all our Success Tracks members, I'd just like to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Obviously, the information you've given us has been fabulous, and I know that members will be able to apply some of the things we've talked about here. I hope many, many people will fax you and ask for your price list and more information about your products. And, of course, everybody will have a chance to see you live and in person at the Wealth and Wisdom program in November in Vancouver. So.
Yep. Thanks very much, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome. So, Success Tracks members, this is Andrew Barber-Starkey saying goodbye for now. I wish you luck in applying what you've learned from this tape, and I look forward to bringing you another Mastermind presentation next month.